Charlie, first of all, when I thought about having a chat with you about your life and your career, I wasn't sure how to introduce you. Whether it was as a straight talking politician, whether it was a cantankerous, argumentative person, or whether it was just a person who really cared. Just an honest, genuine person who really cared about his community. Which one would you like me to introduce
I think
you
you
as?
put all the three in one basket. So they're all orange beans as far as I'm concerned. I can't be an orchid devil, but having said that, I've always tried to adopt my life on the principles that my mum brought us up on, and you particularly know, coming from Yorkshire, a Baptist on the Bible. My mother was as straight as anybody that comes, and we were brought up on the good book, and I've tried to embody those principles during my career, but I'm not a perfectionist. Oh, I can be an awkward old sod at times.
And we've had our words on the radio down the years, and you always address me as young man, which I always found quite funny, and so did the listeners. But I always wondered what drove you to get into politics in the first place, because you worked on the railways, didn't you?
I worked on the railways, and of course when I was 15 years of age I started on the railway, and when I was 18 years of age I was what was called a shop steward, and from that day onwards, and then at 22 years of age, you rightly know that I was elected on the council and all the bag of tricks. But
what made you do that though? What made you? I know you were a shop steward. Is that what drove you to?
Well, yes, because the trade union movement at that time, and this is what I've said again, is totally like in Parliament and things like that now. They encouraged you. They was with you. And I mean, what I've said repeatedly before, as soon as I started on the railways, we had, if anybody had a day off from work, you were sick visitors. People went round to see and there was that family, that comradeship where everybody helped one another. And that's where I got into it, and that's been the pleasure throughout the whole of my career, where I've been able to see that I could do things for other people. And I think it's a gift that's given to you. I think we get these gifts in. And so I've always been one of those people that's gone out of my way, and I've always took great pleasure if I thought somebody at the top of the tree were taking the mickey out of somebody at the bottom. I've been in a position to trip them up.
Did you think when you started at the council you would be there 60 odd years later, the longest serving councillor in Great Britain?
Oh Lord, no, I never thought that for 1 minute, and how I survived the first few years I'll never know, because I mean...
Were you wet behind the ears?
Well, we got to think about the fact that I thought them old fogies, the old gentlemen there, the city fathers, the rows that we've had with them, there were 5 or 6 of us were called young lions, because we was always anti-establishment and but I learned the hard way in some.
Well, you're the old fogey now, aren't you?
Well, when you think in Westminster Central Hall, I moved a resolution to sack everybody over 75 years of age and abolish the automatic system, which was abolished. I got that through nationally, but and then I'm stuck there at 85 years of age. It don't add up, does it?
You had many battles in your time at the council as well, didn't you? Things didn't always go your way.
Oh, I've had an awful lot of battles. I've had a lot of battles politically and nationally as well. I mean, they served me a writ not to attend any meetings because I'd heckled Edward Heath on the marketplace. I got through out of the corn exchange. My feet, I think, they still hurt today when I was kicked out there. And then on the sewers, we've had a wonderful time, In 1992, when I was accused of corrupt practice by people who they never name, and then you get a letter 18 months later from the Attorney General's office saying it was all a sad mistake. But that's not it. I never, I mean, all the way along I knew I'd never done anything wrong, but it doesn't matter. There I sit in Thorpewood Police Station that I built when I was chairman of the Buildings Committee on the Police Authority, In
your own cell?
In my own cell. Dear.
When you go back, I mean, you mentioned some of the battles and your proudest moments and things that you are especially proud of. You always stood up for your ideals. I mean, the Ugandan situation was one.
Oh, the Ugandan situation. I mean, and I learned a lesson there, because you see, I went back in, I went down to Strathfield and I brought a busload of them back to Peterborough. I was able to get 25 houses from the Development Corporation, 25 from the City Council. We gave them 50 houses, but the National, I learnt a lot, it was the National Front at that time, used to walk up and down here for a fortnight in front of my house, and as long as they keep walking, there's nothing you can do about it.
It must have been a frightening time.
I had to be escorted to work by the police because I was a railway driver, and I always worked nights so I could do my council work during the day. And I've gone on my bike to work with a police car following me all the way down because I had death threats and everything else. And then to cap it, I was up for election, and the four polling stations, the National Front walked up and down in front of them saying a vote today means more blacks in Peterborough. You know, that's how it was.
You can't imagine that now, can you?
No, you can't. And then, of course, it was ironic, but there were some students from the West Indians that was seconded to the town, all under the chief executive at that time, Mr. Clark, and he got them on polling stations. When they went into the polling station, there was these coloured lads handing the ballot papers out. But I got the highest vote ever recorded because people are not like that. They took me for what I was, and I got more votes then by the way that I was being treated.
Do you think that's one of the reasons that people have been endeared to you so much, is that you've always stuck to your principles?
And I always believe in practicing what you preach. I then went back because there was a lot of Asians, Ugandan Asians there that were crippled. One boy in particular that couldn't walk. They took his calipers off him when he was, and he was on, and he shuffled about on his bottom. So at my front room, my little box room down here, we made it into a bedroom, and I had him for 12 months, and he lived with us. So I believe in practicing what you preach. That's one of my proudest things, because Peterborough was a totally different town, you know that, and it was to be an experiment of integrating a new town on an old existing city, the only one of its kind there's ever been, and that's put in Peterborough with the new town. That caused a lot of trouble for a start, didn't it? And my biggest disappointment, and it still is a disappointment, is that Castor was taken out of the plan. And over at Castor now is over 1,000 acres of land, which you've seen the road work, the networks of roads are all around there, owned by the government. We went from the Commission to New Towns to the government body now, and if they wanted to solve the housing problem in Peterborough overnight, they could get stuck into that land that they own out there. So that's hypocrisy again.
People of Castor might not agree.
I don't give a monkeys about that, to be truthful. Well, but we kept the village concept in. You look at Warrington, you look at the Orton Waterville and Orton Longville, then they wasn't affected at all because there was no through traffic in there, and Castor could be well kept out of any development core. But I would say to Castor Parish Council tomorrow, I would make them responsible, and I would do exactly what we did all those years ago, which I was so proud of, when we built 200 houses at £2 deposit, and they could do that over there now. And I get so cross, bitterly cross, when we have all this bed blocking now and the old people.
When I came to Peterborough in 1989, the parkways were surrounded by grass. I thought, this is a strange place. You know, I'll never get to know whether I'm on Neame Parkway or Longthorpe Parkway or whatever. And that was the change in the 70s for Peterborough, but it's changed dramatically since I came here in 1989. We've got a proper multicultural city. We've got a vastly expanding city. And I just wondered, you've seen it all, from the village, if you like, to the city we have today, the metropolis.
I've always believed in this philosophy, and I was brought up now. My dad was an Enoch Powell fan, and we used to fall out like thick thieves, Dad and I did. But my dad also used to kneel at the side of the bed with us and say his prayers. And one of the things that's always motivated me is the fact that we say, Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the earth, brown and yellow, black and white, all are precious in his sight. And that's, again, what motivates me. You know, I've been in the Salvation Army for donkey's years, and that was, again, what taught me a great deal. It was going around the public houses when I was a boy of 16 or 17, selling the war cries. I lost my uniform twice for belting somebody. I shouldn't have done it, but somebody upset me in one of the pubs, so I clouted and won, and that was it, full stop.
I'd have paid money to see that, Charlie. But what I was trying to get at, you know, Peterborough's changed dramatically a number of times. Has it changed for the better?
I think, you know, indirectly, yeah, I think we still hold our own, but I must be scrupulously honest with you. I think, and I'm very bitterly disappointed with the Hamptons. I mean, we had the controlled development of the Peterborough Development Corporation, and when you think that they're building places at Hampton that are not much better than the GN Cottage that were built in 1845 for space, there's no gardens at the back, and I think Hampton, in a few years' time, well, I shouldn't say it indirectly, but this is how I feel. I think it'll turn out to be a slum in about 40 years' time.
Peterborough continues to grow. It's second, third largest growing city in the UK, I think, and you know, that's a good thing. But you spent 60 years, over 60 years, on the council fighting for people, making sure they were getting the things they needed. What do you make of the present situation with all the cuts to council budgets in Peterborough and the effect it's having on the city?
These cuts that they're making now are going to have the most devastating effect in the next 3 to 4 years' time. Make no mistake about that.
But when you were on the council, I mean, the council could build houses, it could deal with homelessness, it could look after certain public services, and that was all changed. We were told it was all going to be better if it was all given to private companies. Has it been better?
No, of course it hasn't. It's been totally... I mean, the whole point about it, which I wrote, the Prime Minister wrote, everybody else. When and it's 20 years ago this year, 1968, 1998, when we abolished the Cambridgeshire County Council as far as we were concerned and became a unitary authority, promising everybody, but only going back 20 years, promising everybody that we'd go back to 50 years ago when everything was in-house, when we dealt with everything from cradle to grave. What have we got now? We've got 95% of all our services that we was going to administer ourselves all put out to the private sector now.
Because of cutbacks?
Because of cutbacks. But again, because the government told us, didn't they? Previous governments, all political parties, said, you've got to cooperate with the private sector. We will do that. Look at the mess we're in now. We had Enterprise take over our dustbins and goodness knows what, and then they went down the drain, so we got Amy's. Now Amy's have gone somewhere else, and we've got somebody else coming in, and all these things. And we were promised, you see, the money that we was going to save by going out to the private sector. It's cost us a bomb.
What would you do, Charlie, if you were Theresa May now, and how would you solve the problems we've got, which, as you say, some of which appear to have been self-created?
I would say, look here, we've got to put the clock back. We really have got to put the clock right back and give local authorities the know-how to deal with everything in-house, and let them be captains of their own ship. Let them do what our forefathers did.
Go back to the future.
What did our forefathers do in Peterborough, for instance? They created, didn't they, millions and millions of pounds worth of assets, and all they're doing now is selling the family silver off, isn't it? And it can't go on forever.
Does it make you feel like you've wasted your time a bit on the council?
Oh no, I don't think I've wasted my time, because again, coming back to the previous question that you asked me, I mean, I went to a funeral only yesterday, and this happened frequently. I just got there and a gentleman run out the people there, and he shook hands with him and said, Charles, don't you remember what you did for me 45 years ago? He said, you got me my first house when nobody would deal with me, you got me my... He said, don't you? I said, I'm sorry, it's my age now, but I forgot. And that's the satisfaction that you could get, and still get it today, where the grandchildren, I mean, I finished up with the great-grandchildren voting for me, didn't I, after 60-odd years, you know. But no, that's a pleasure that you still get today, and you can see the good. But a local councillor today, he's not going to have any of that at all. A local councillor today will not be able to walk around Peterborough and say, well, I achieved this, or my council that I was the leader of achieved this. And there's no job satisfaction in it whatsoever, is it? And bear in mind also that for 25 years we did it for nothing. Everything was voluntary.
But if they're so powerless, what's the point?
There is no point whatsoever. I mean, if you wanted to save some money that's coming up May, you could get rid of the local elections, couldn't you? Because there is nobody that can stand. If I went out this house with you now and I just walked, no, I've said it repeatedly, if I get up in the morning and turn the water tap on and go to the toilet, that's run by Anglia Water Authority. That used to be the Peterborough City Council. If I go and empty the dustbin or put something in the dustbin and put it out there, that's run now by a private company. If I go out onto the footpath and the lighting and everything else, that's run by another private company. If I go round the corner, I had 1,500 municipal properties in my area. They were all given to Cross Skis, and the right to buy has meant now that half those properties are all being owned by certain sections of the community that have bought them as people have left them, and they're all now put out to Eastern Europeans, let off. So the whole concept of that's complete. If you go by the school, that's not run by the local authority now. They don't want councillors on there. There's no councillors on schools. They're academies and things like that. The libraries are closed. The police houses that we built for the police, they're completely gone. And there is nothing in this ward or any ward in the city that a councillor has any responsibility over. And now, as you rightly know, if you want, they're closing the places down where you used to go and pay your rent and your rates and get your, they're being closed down. Everything now has got to be done online, where 30% of the people, elderly people, geriatrics like me, haven't got not online and things like that. So they've got to be done online. If a councillor wishes to do something for you as a constituent, he's got to have your written permission to do it. We've gone absolutely balmy.
Would you vote yourself out of office now, Charlie, if you were still a councillor?
I'd certainly vote. I'd certainly say that 90. Yes, I would, because this ward has got 3 councillors, duplicates, and they can't do anything because it's a cabinet system now. So they've got no say whatsoever. No say whatsoever. Complete. So there's 40,000 quid paid in councillors for this particular area. One could do it. You've got one councillor that represents 10,000 people on Cambridgeshire County Council in some of the rural areas that are as large as Peterborough put together. As large as one councillor for 10 to 12,000 electors. We've got one councillor for 2,300. And in the Hamptons, over there, you've got one councillor for 500. And that's where the money is just wickedly wasted. Wickedly wasted.
When you look back, you know, when you go to meet your maker, Charlie, hopefully many, many years from now.
It won't be too long, don't worry about that.
when you go and you get to the pearly gates, what do you think he's going to have on your sheet? Is he going to let you in? Is St Peter going to let you in?
I don't know. We had one of our, I've told this story many, many times, we had a councillor that was a railway driver. And you know what railwaymen are, lovely people, and they learn you from A to Z. If you worked on the railways, they'd tell you what they thought about the council and everything. But we're tremendously loyal at the end of the day. And I always remember this gentleman being shockingly ill, Bill Cashmore, an ex-mayor of the city, and they were taking the mickey out of him. He got back to work on night duties, and the railway guard came in and he said, Bill, he said, I thought you were dead, because they're ever so nice, you know. Well, he said, actually, I did die. He said, and I went up to the pearly gates, he said, and Peter were there, crossing us on and off, and he said, what was your occupation then in life? He said, well, I was a railway driver. Ah, he said, to be perfectly frank, we've got too many of them just now. You go back, it's guards that we want. And it was the guard that was asking him this question. A dry old stick and things like that. No, I would hope at the old, it's like on the railwayman's life is a journey through life. He gets hooked up when he starts with this train, doesn't he? He might, if he's got, he might get a clear road with green signals all the way to Finsbury Park into King's Cross, or he might get yellows, or he might abruptly get reds. So it's a stop and start situation. You go into a tunnel at one end, and from darkness you come out into light, and that's a journey through life. So I think if I do get up top, I would like him to say what many people have said when you've got to London and you put your head out the cab and passengers have come by and they've said, well done, driver, or well done, thou good and faithful servant. But and if the place ain't there, well, it's just too bad, isn't it?
Well, I've enjoyed our chats, our discussions on the radio. I've enjoyed talking to you down the years, Charlie. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thanks for talking to us today.
Oh, well, any time, you know, well, that's it, boy. But you know, I've had a wonderful journey through life. Let's put it that way.